Okay, well, hello everybody, and welcome to our Clemson IO Psychology virtual orientation. Um, as a caveat, we've never done this before, so we're going to be on a journey of self-discovery here as you guys learn about the program. I'm joined here by several of my colleagues and a couple of our graduate students. And I want to really start by giving us a chance to kind of introduce ourselves and tell you a little bit about the kind of work we do. I don't think I'd love to have a chance to talk with each of you individually, but we've got an hour and I don't think we're going to get to that today. So what I want to do is, for those of you that, well, I guess all of you registered and then posed questions. What I did was we had about 80 respondents at that point, and I kind of organized those questions into this presentation. So you'll see some slides that are just a bunch of questions that we'll use as talking points, and others where I put more sort of concrete information on here. You'll also see that you notice that we recorded this, and we're going to post it somehow on our website or on our YouTube page. I'm not really sure yet how, but it'll be available if there's something you want to go back to. And I would say that I think what I'd like to do is just go through the whole presentation, and then hopefully we'll have some time at the end if we have any extra questions. But if there's something you're dying to know, I'd say put it in the chat, and then we'll kind of go back and try to hit as many of those questions as we can at the end. But let me do the presentation first and see if if I didn't address things in here. So why don't I just Marissa, you want to just kick us off and say hello?
Sure. I'm Marissa Scheffler. I'm an associate professor of biopsychology in the department. I will be recruiting grad students this coming fall. So my research is focused on teams and team dynamics, multi-team systems, really trying to help organizations do better at improving teamwork and getting those big teams of teams to work together effectively. And I've also been dabbling some in the burnout and well-being space, working with Tom Britt and others to investigate and understand some of the challenges that we face with in organizations like healthcare today, and trying to, again, address some of the intervention needs and that kind of thing there. So welcome.
Thanks. Jenna?
All right. Hi, everyone. It's so great to see all these names, this turnout. So I'm Jenna. I'm an assistant professor in the program. I study worker health and well-being, and in particular with an emphasis on newer technologies such as work-related smartphone use and its implications for non-work relationships and well-being, and also workforce automation, including impacts for workers' identities, as well as career preparedness and career transitions. So I'll hopefully be taking a student for the upcoming year, and then I'll have a few projects in these topic areas that I'll be looking to start some data collection on, and that would be where some student assistance would be really exciting and great. Great, thanks. So I see Tom, you're next up on my screen. Want to go for it?
Sure. I appreciate everyone being here. My name is Tom Britt, and I'm a professor in the department. Believe it or not, I've been here since 2000, so 23 years. I teach our graduate course on organizational stress, and I currently am the advisor for 4 students in the doctoral program. One of these students is going to be receiving her PhD in a few weeks and already has a job at Aptima lined up, which is an applied research organization. My primary research interests fall within occupational health psychology. Recently, I've been involved in trying to understand how to conceptualize and study resilience among employees in high-risk occupations, such as military personnel, firefighters, and emergency medicine physicians. And doing this, I look for factors that promote resilience, such as being involved in meaningful work and having strong social connections and having leaders who are sensitive to mental health related issues. And then I also look at what happens when employees fail to be resilient and develop mental health problems as a result of their stressful work. And so occupational health psychology does a great job documenting stressors' effects on mental health, but what determines whether employees get help for their problems, and how can the organization be proactive and supportive? But happy to have you here and look forward to any questions you have. Am I supposed to pick another person? Patrick, I see you next up here.
I was trying to do it, Tom, but I was on mute, so it didn't work very well.
Yep, my name is Patrick Rasopa. I'm a full professor and in my area is industrial organizational psychology. I teach primarily graduate courses in, or 3 graduate courses in statistics, univariate and multivariate statistics. Some of my substantive research interests are in individual differences, stereotypes, and fairness in the workplace. Given my interest in statistics and methods, I serve on lots of dissertation and thesis committees, as well as a variety of grants, primarily grants funded by Department of Defense type grants, for example, 2 Army grants, work with the Navy, and a few others that are in process with large military defense contractors, but most primarily focusing on statistical modeling aspects.
Thank you. We also have Robin.
Thanks. Hey, I'm Robin Kowalski. My degree is in social psychology, but I am part of the IO program. I do research on a lot of different things. I guess my primary area is cyberbullying, but in the last few years, we've sort of migrated also into looking at psychological mattering and organizational matterings and belongingness. So, you know, the degree to which people feel like they matter to others and how important that is to behavior, both individually and in groups, again, particularly in the workplace. But I also do research on sort of dark things like school and mass shootings. And of course, many of the mass shootings have also happened in the workplace. So yeah, I just dabble in a lot of different areas, but it's super great to have all of y'all here this evening.
All right, thanks, Robin. I want to just give our grad students a chance to say hello, and hopefully you'll hear from them later as well. I know we have Allie was on, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
there you are.
Hi, I'm Allie. I'm a 3rd-year PhD student working with Dr. Marissa Scheffler.
Thanks. Noe.
Hi, my name is Noe Lani, but I typically just go by Noe. I'm a 2nd-year master's student. I personally don't have a research focus, but I've worked under Dr. Allison Traylor, and my grad assistantship is under student affairs with Clemson's Healthy Campus.
Okay, thank you. And so I'm Bob Sinclair. I'm the graduate program coordinator. So I do not all, but a lot of the administrative work that has to do with kind of managing both our PhD and our master's programs. My research is generally in the area of occupational health, and specifically kind of I think primary focus these days is on what I would call economic stress. And that's really about how poverty, people's concerns about their future income, they're worrying about losing their job, unemployment, any underemployment, working at kind of, you know, below your qualification level. So what are the organizational consequences of all that? And so we know that there's a lot of research to suggest that there's health concerns associated with economic stressors, but we don't know quite as much about how they affect the workplace. And so I've been working in that area, and that's a lot of different kind of sub-directions in that, including just trying to understand the nature of economic stress, looking at intergenerational transmission of economic stressors, looking at documenting organizational consequences, and I have quite a bit going on in that area. The others are organizational climate, which are really kind of what can we do to help create organizations where people feel like their employer values them, right? And there's been a lot of work in that area in safety and, you know, employees' sense of their organization's priority for safety. And it's moving into people now across in several different institutions looking at mental health related aspects of climate. That's kind of a hot topic these days. And so I've done some work in that area, and Tom and I have collaborated on some things as well related to the stigma around mental health concerns. And then finally, I just, I've got another sort of bucket of research that I've had trouble coming up with a label for because it's pretty much all a bunch of other random things that I do. But some of them are looking at the employee-employer relationship in terms of organizational commitment and employee retention. Some of it is on resilience in the workplace. And then there's a variety of other things too, but that's kind of a good, I think, quick and dirty overview. All right, so I know we have quite a few international people on and maybe some national people that don't know where Clemson is and all that kind of stuff, but you can see this is South Carolina, kind of on the southeastern coast of the United States, and then Clemson is up here on this big kind of lake system of Lake Hartwell, Lake Keowee, Lake Jocassee, which is a little bit farther north. So located about 4 hours from the coast. About 2 hours from Charlotte, and down this way about 2 hours from Atlanta. And just, this is our 1 second campus tour, but down here at the bottom is Brackett Hall, which is where we live most of our work lives. Occasionally we'll have classes elsewhere or meetings, if you're collaborating with some other department, but all of the faculty, all the student offices are in this building, which is here, kind of in this, so you can kind of oversee sort of our view. If you look out one side of the building to our library, it's a very sort of scenic area. And then this is kind of looking the other way toward football stadium and sort of the main campus. And you can get a sense it's lakes and mountains in the background and a somewhat rural area, but also located fairly close to Greenville, South Carolina, which is a small growing city that is actually quite attractive place for in terms of the better small cities really in the United States in terms of a place to live and I think place that people visit. I also wanted to say, I think I'm gonna, no, I didn't want to do that. Sorry, give me 1 second. Crap. Okay, I was trying to turn one thing off and turn another thing on and I kept hitting the wrong button. So what I don't want to do tonight is talk much about the field of IO psychology in general. I know we had a couple of questions about that, but by and large, I assume that most of you know enough about the field to be looking at graduate programs and that kind of thing. If you don't, or if you're you're new to this and you want to learn more, I think two really good sources, and you could find others out there, but probably the best single source is the Society for Industrial Organizational Psychology. And they have a great student section, lots of information on graduate programs and the field and salaries and all kinds of stuff. And then there's also an industrial organizational psychology subreddit, which is used primarily by people like you. I think it's younger people who are thinking about starting a program. Maybe they're the first year in the program or a new master's graduate. They have a I can't remember what they're called, but kind of a standing post with questions about graduate school. And they got sticky, I guess you call it, at the top. And I think that's a great to get a sort of students' perspective on things in IO psychology. That's a great resource. But there are some faculty that post on there too and answer students' questions. And so I think if you want to learn more about the field, those are great places to go. And if we have time at the end, we can talk about that a little bit more. But I just wanted to put that out there that what I really want to talk about today is Clemson. And basically, we have two programs, right? We have a PhD program and a master's program. We do not have an online training option, because some people ask that. And we do not offer clinical psychology training. It's subtle in terms of why that's relevant to you guys, I guess, but I will just say it's nice to be an industrial psychologist in a department that does not have a clinical graduate program for some political and financial reasons, I guess, and among other things. Plus the clinical people are usually crazy. But so our PhD is 90 credits. It includes a required master's thesis if you don't come in with one. Students complete comprehensive exams, usually in the 4th year, and then a doctoral dissertation. We take approximately 3 to 5 new PhD students a year. I'll say a little bit more about funding in a minute, but that can vary just depending on, our needs, what our current student population is, the nature of the applicant pool. But generally speaking, over the years, we've aimed to recruit about 4 new people into that as PhD students. Then we also have a master's program that's in applied psychology, but it has an IO psychology, a health and human factors tracks. Those are all 39 credits, where they're, like Noe gave you the example, that you can come in and have it be a thesis required, or substitute the thesis for internship or research hours. And so that model is typically there for students that want the IO training, but see themselves as going out and getting a job after a master's degree, and are maybe a little bit less interested in kind of research. We're still, you'll see other master's programs are quite a bit bigger than ours. And we are really aiming to have about 4 to 5 new students a year, and we don't want to grow it much beyond that. So it's still fairly competitive admission. I'd say probably 2/3 of those students are non-thesis students, and then we have some that come in. The distinction is the thesis students are usually recruited to work with a particular faculty member. So, and I should say, like, I didn't say this, I'll take a PhD student this year, and I'll probably take a master's student. But, so that some faculty recruit master's students with an expectation they'll work with them on a thesis. And then we also will recruit several other students that come in as at least as non-thesis to start. And some of those students decide to do a thesis later on. Some of the students transition to the PhD program, and there's lots of different permutations of that. In terms of faculty, some of you are familiar with this, but you can check out the people section of our webpage. That all of us have individual faculty web pages. And then quite a few of us have videos on our psychology department YouTube page. And so if you just Google Clemson or search in YouTube Clemson psychology, you'll find that pretty easily. I also know that some of you are probably current Clemson students that are looking for ways to stay in Clemson, and the IO program happened to be here. And I'd say that's great, but I also want you to know that we have a new health psychology PhD program that's currently in the proposal phase. It's been approved by the college and I guess by the university, and then it's got to be reviewed by our board of trustees in the state, and that review will occur in the spring. We're not anticipating any obstacles to that, and expect to have that in place in the fall. But because we don't, because it's not officially in place now, we can't recruit students to join it. But if you really did have health interests, then I would say look at the master's in applied psychology with the health track. And then there's an assumption that the students that they're taking into that now, at least some of them will be PhD students once the PhD program is in place. Okay. So I think, that's the kind of basics of the program. We have a graduate program handbook on our department webpage that will break down the curriculum in great detail of all the different course requirements. Basically, the education is a mix of statistics courses, a 3-course core in industrial psychology, organizational psychology, and testing. And then students take a mix of research hours, psychology or other electives, thesis and dissertation credits. And that part of their degree tends to be a little bit more customized to the needs and interests of the particular student. But I know what a lot of you ask your questions about, well, what happens when you get done, and where do students go? And I would say that, and I've said this at pretty much every university I've been at, that about 80% of our students go into applied jobs. And I think that's just, there's some exceptions to that, but I think that's pretty typical of a lot of programs. That, by and large, our graduates tend to take applied jobs, but if you're more interested in an academic setting, we certainly offer training that prepares people for that. And we've had success getting people into good jobs at PhD programs for research-oriented careers, as well as students going into more teaching-oriented careers. but just to give you a sense, this is kind of the breadth of just graduates within the last, 3 or 4 years, including this is a mix of master's and PhD people. And you can see everything from, University of or Auburn University's, esteemed PhD program in IO psychology to, more education focused, to, current hot companies, places that people, get excited about working at, like Walt Disney, NASA, US Air Force, other educational institutions, consulting firms, large companies. And I think it's a pretty good mix. And I think it's, I think fairly typical of what any kind of, respectable IO program would be preparing students to do. We got several questions about the application process. The basic requirements are a personal statement. You get 3 letters of reference. We review your transcripts. For the application, they can be unofficial transcripts. If you're successfully admitted to the program, at that point, you need to provide official transcripts. Students often include a writing sample. That's not mandatory, but we encourage it. What is that typically? Well, it's usually if they've got, a publication that they played a significant role in, an honors thesis, a, significant paper for an undergraduate class, something they presented at a conference, and I think it's something just 1 illustrates that you can write, and 2 gives you a chance to show some tangible evidence of your research skills. And so I think it's good to provide that if you can. And then of course, a curriculum vitae or resume as well. We do not require the GRE at present. We do not have application fees at present. And I don't think they're requiring specific test scores on any of the English language exams either. So we're pretty open in that regard. And the implication, one implication is we get a lot of applications because, and I think that's good, but it also, it makes it somewhat competitive too. And let me just say to my colleagues, I'm going to kind of zoom my way through this stuff, but if you want to weigh in on something, and feel like I missed something, please just, please feel free to interrupt me. What type of recommendation letters? I always say, find the 3 people that can say the best things about you, other than your parents or your roommate. That I think generally speaking, in my experience, faculty have a better sense of what to put in these letters than like your supervisor does at your job. And so the non-university ones tend to be a little bit less effusive just in general. And, I think what you really want are people that can offer behaviorally specific examples that illustrate, the wonderfulness that is you. And, I think I would at least probably, I could always come up with exceptions to any of this stuff, but I'd say probably at least 2 of the 3 should be faculty. And, a work supervisor, sure, if you think that's the 3rd best person to say things about you, but, I think that, I would maybe, if you can, coach them a little bit to be specific in what they say. Extracurricular recommendations. I'd be curious if my colleagues have a different opinion on this than I do. My opinion in general is that extracurriculars are not super important. I think there's things that people could do that would be, like if you're in a leadership role in a student organization, or something that's really specific to our field. But I would always tell my students that if you're joining an extracurricular thing, just have another line on your resume. It's probably not going to help you that much, because it's not going to substitute for the core stuff that we look at. If you have a lousy GPA, having an extracurricular organization isn't going to make up for that. The reason I would get into extracurriculars, though, is that they give you opportunities to have experience and connect with people and learn interpersonal skills and broaden your horizons. And that's all stuff that may not be as instrumental directly to getting into graduate school, but but just in terms of your personal development, I think it's good to do. Interdisciplinary research orientation. That probably depends. I think that different faculty might answer that differently. I think having any kind of research orientation is good. And certainly a lot of us do interdisciplinary research. I don't know that most of us select people based on their interdisciplinary research orientation, but I think certainly, you know, if I think about like my colleagues on this call, that a lot of them work with people in a lot of other departments. And I think that, you know, I think that that breadth of research competency and orientation is, I think, generally a good thing. Does a specific research project have to be developed before applying? I've certainly gotten this question from a few of you, and the answer is generally no. You know, we're looking for people to join our research teams, and, you know, to varying degrees of specificity, we have a notion of, you know, if you come in, this is what you're going to be doing and working on this project or that project. We're not looking for somebody to say, here's the project I want to do under your supervision, right? Because we're looking for people that are part of our team, not opportunities to supervise somebody doing something else, really. You know, I think that said, I think you want to, you know, this next question, what do supervisors attach importance to? Because we're looking for people who are going to join our research teams, you know, we want people that can articulate, why do you want to be at Clemson? Why do you want to work with this particular faculty member? You know, and I think people do place value on that to show that you've thought about it, you know, and that, you know, you didn't forget to copy and paste University of Georgia at the top of your personal statement, and, you know, and which that stuff happens every year, you know. So I really just, you know, we really think are looking for evidence that people have been thoughtful in their choices of where they apply, and you know, because it comes through of like, I don't really know what I want to do. I just know I want to get a PhD in something, and please take me, right? Versus someone that, you know, I've read your research and I'm really compelled by this part of it, and I know that you're still working on that, and, you know, that kind of thing. What do we evaluate in prospective students? I will tell you, I think generally speaking, programs evaluate students in one of two ways. One way is that they will admit that basically the top students in terms of academic potential without regard to their match with an advisor. And I was talking to we're interviewing for another IO person today that we're hiring. And she was saying at her university, they literally have a regression model where they plug in a bunch of factors into an equation and then they admit students based on that. And that's certainly variations of that is one approach. And then in those schools, the students come and then they figure out who they want to work with once they get there. We do it kind of the other way, which is that we are looking for a match with the student and the faculty advisor in the application process. So I think we're really looking for that match of interests, along with evidence of research competencies, you know, interpersonal effectiveness, initiative, you know, that people are self-motivated. I don't know. Do you guys want to add anything to that? Anything I didn't say?
I was just gonna to double down on the initiative part. I think that's something, especially, so a lot of the research I do is with organizations and in, you know, field settings, and with real people where the work that we're doing matters to them and they're going to use the results, and they need to know that, you know, that our team is dedicated and willing to, you know, to offer our support. And so because of that, then it's really important for students who come in and work with us to be able to kind of step up and, you know, recognize whenever maybe something's needed, or kind of take their own kind of, you know, initiative to start to design a, you know, research project, or be able to kind of step up and take the lead on something fairly quickly. So that especially is something that I'm looking for in prospective students who are going to join our lab.
Yeah, I'd say the same here. I think that, you know, I think the students that are successful are the ones that really kind of take the bull by the horns and just kind of start generating ideas and doing things on their own. And the ones that aren't as successful are the ones that wait around to be told to do something, you know, which I know people are sometimes socialized that way of just tell me what to do and I'll do it, you know, and it's, you know, I think a little different in graduate school. Anybody else want to add anything to that?
I would just echo that same attribute, whether you call it personal initiative or proactive motivation, just kind of not waiting for things to happen, but making things happen, and always checking in to see if there's anything else you can do. I think something related to that, maybe not in terms of the application, but once you're here, is checking in with the faculty that you're working with, and sometimes we can get absorbed in a project, and at least as far as I'm concerned, I don't mind getting emails, checking in to see how things are going and if there's anything that can be done. So I think those attributes are important.
Thank you. All right. So what's next? This is just one. This is a very detailed and specific question, so I give it its own slide. Question about evaluating transfer credit. So if you're coming in with a prior master's degree, we do admit students with a prior master's degree, and we do accept coursework from other programs. We do a review of that coursework after students are admitted. And, and the reason is, like, if you think about it, for any one student, it's just tell me what my coursework is going to count for, and that's not a big deal. But if it's 30 students that do that, it becomes onerous, and for people that, we might not be admitting. So that we typically don't do any kind of formal evaluation of transfer credits until after we accept students. But generally, I don't know that I've ever turned down a master's thesis from another program. So usually that will transfer, as will most coursework in most ways. And I mean, there's been some cases where we might not take something, and it's usually just something that has nothing to do with our degree. But we don't do it as part of the application process for students to decide whether they want to apply here. All right, funding. I know you guys have quite great interest in this. The first thing I'd say is that there's no application process that we automatically consider applicants for funding as part of the review. There's nothing you need to do. At the PhD level, most PhD students are funded by the university in one of three ways: a graduate teaching assistantship, where they're helping a faculty member by teaching in a lab section of something; graduate instructor of record, where they're teaching their own course, and you have to have a master's degree completed to do that; and then graduate research assistantships, which are, if you have a faculty member who has a grant, they may hire you to work on that grant. And so those positions at Clemson range from 15 to 19K usually. There's some exceptions where people might go higher than that, but they can't go lower. It includes the 9-month year full tuition. Students pay fees that the students can tell me if this is wrong, but I think it's something like $1,200 a term. And I think they're working to eliminate some of those fees too, but we'll see how that goes. With the master's program, there's no guarantee of funding as a condition of admission. However, quite a few of our master's students wind up being funded at some point in their time here. Sometimes they're hired on faculty research teams. Sometimes I need more help from the PhD students, to fill some missing slots, and I might hire someone for a term in the department. Like Noe mentioned, that we have a few students working in administrative positions on campus. But you may wind up being self-funded too. So we don't, like any of those positions, that we've had quite a few students get them, and it's not uncommon, but we don't guarantee it. So, I wouldn't say to someone applying to the master's program, yes, if you come here, you are 100% going to be funded. Because it could be you're funded for part of it and not all of it. Maybe it's the second year and not the first year, or, maybe you get hired halfway through to do something. And it's just, these things are not regular positions where I know every year there's going to be X number of open slots. It's just, if a position comes up, we try to get our students into it. And, I think we like to see our students be in funded positions because it helps them, but we don't guarantee it as a condition of admission. A lot of students had questions about being eligible to apply. And I would just say briefly, we don't we don't have a determination about eligibility. Really, the only thing is I think the graduate school, and I'm not even sure if this is 100% firm, but I think they don't like people that come from 3-year undergraduate programs. But we don't do any kind of preliminary screening to say, yes, you have permission to apply for this program. Generally speaking, it's students apply and then we make accept reject decisions. In terms of background, you see some questions here about, if I don't have a background in psychology, should I apply? And I don't think there's one answer to that, because it just really depends a lot on who else is in the application pool and what your particular strengths are. And, I think that certainly, we're going to look at things like, has this person had any kind of basic education in statistics, for example? Because, we don't want to have people come in and then just realize that they can't handle stats when they're here, because those students aren't going to make it through the program. So we'll look at things like that, but we don't really have a firm. And then this other thing I would say is, I think we like to see research in some kind of social science background. It doesn't have to be psychology, but it's nice if it's psychology. It doesn't have to be industrial psychology, but it's nice if it is. But certainly, we will admit applicants that they're not all students that have extensive industrial psychology research experience before coming to grad school. I'll just say that, because those students are fairly rare. Does it make sense to apply without a previous degree in psychology? Well, like I said, I think that the chances admissions is competitive, and I can't sugarcoat that. We get anywhere from like 60 to 80 applicants to our PhD program. It's less than that for the master's program, maybe 20, 30. So it's competitive, but it just, we don't make like a black and white, if you have a degree in psychology, you're good to go. And if you don't have a degree in psychology, don't talk to us. It's more just, what's the totality of the person's background and how does it compare to everybody else in the pool? Okay, we had a bunch of questions about the content of the program. Will research outside of one's thesis dissertation work similarly at the graduate level? I didn't completely know what that person had in mind, but generally speaking, that your thesis and dissertation work, as compared to the undergrad, is much more self-directed, and you probably won't have faculty bugging you every day and saying, hey, did you work on your thesis today and all that. It's more like we assume that you're there to get that stuff done and it's up to you to get it done. And we support you, and try to, offer resources to help you get things done. But it's your thesis and your dissertation at the end of the day. So that, yeah. And then certainly people do research with multiple faculty. It just kind of depends on the orientation of the student. What does cooperation with the Marissa's doing all kinds of stuff that I can't keep track of these days, but working in healthcare. We have faculty that do consulting. And it really just, I think it just depends on the individual faculty member. But we have a new initiative now at the college level that's all about building private sector partnerships too, where the college is really interested in, what can we do to get even more students out doing even more in the community. And I'm on that committee, so we're just having conversations about that now to be able to expand, because, I think a slight disadvantage of Clemson is that the location is somewhat rural in terms of it's not in a big city, so that, there's not as many corporations like right out the back door of the psych department. So we wind up working with people in Greenville and in the surrounding cities and, across the country as well. If a student has the occupational health concentration, what do they do? I'd say it's not additional courses. Basically, you would take my occupational health course, Tom's organizational stress course, probably Jenna's future of work course, and some other elective. And then you have to do research in occupational health. And so, but those would count toward your regular degree requirements too. They're just like they're the IO courses you would take toward your IO degree. Do PhD students ever take elective courses during the summer? Generally speaking, no. We fund people the tuition for the 9-month academic year. So in the summer, students are either home or most of them are, a lot of them are on internships. Some of them might be sticking around here doing research. Some of them might be teaching, but we don't offer graduate seminars in the department. And the other thing about it is that our department funding does not cover tuition for students in the summer in most cases. So typically students don't take courses in the summer. It's magic how those two things fit together. What coding language is primarily used for data analysis, and do we teach R? The answer is yes. We teach, this is Patrick, teaches some of our stats courses, and are they still all both R and SPSS, Patrick?
So for 2 of the courses, it's both SPSS and R for all analyses, univariate and multivariate analyses. So they get exposed to both, but I definitely emphasize R. And then for a third, the third stats course that I teach, it's only R.
The structural equation modeling course must be in R too, right?
And right, the structural equation modeling course, that's also taught in R. And we also have a faculty member that's taught a new course. It's basically an introductory course in programming in both Python and R. So his focus is primarily in Python. He programs primarily in Python. So another great resource. So absolutely get lots of exposure to R and exposure to Python. But SPSS used as well for lots of the sort of common analyses.
Can you say something about the data analytics program too? Because you know more about it than I do.
Sure. I know. So Clemson, this is in collaboration with the Department of Management and also mathematical sciences. So a terminal master's in data science and analytics. It's completely online. There's different formats for that online degree, where it could be completed in essentially about 1.5 years or 2 years if you whether you went full-time or part-time. But that particular program, again, it's completely online, and the emphasis is really there's some machine learning, but broadly data science applied to organizational settings. So there'll be some aspects of, for sure, programming, both Python, R, SAS, but then there'll be some other elements that are more kind of at the administrative level or kind of data warehousing aspects. So not specifically including any aspects of psychology or human behavior, but some of the other courses might involve kinds of analytics or analyses that would be pretty typical in like psychology. But it's again a pretty good program, and again completely online.
Okay. And so the way it works is that if you're in that, we've had a couple students in it, like one of my students is taking it now. It would be a separate master's program that you would get like 2 master's degrees basically, and you have to, I think you have to apply and be admitted to it. And like my student is doing it now. She's a PhD student, and she's basically taking pretty much that whole master's in her 4th and 5th year. So once she's got most of the industrial psychology content done. But it's, I think, a great, value add to a degree these days, given the emphasis on data science in a lot of the jobs that are out there. Culture, I'm not going to get through all of this in 13 minutes. I want to make sure we get a chance to hear from the grad students, but I'd say that we have generally a pretty supportive culture. There's certainly, we have a student organization that our students play a very important role in that organization, and that organization is very important as part of our IO program. Yes, our students are very active at conferences. I would say one thing, keep in mind, we don't place interns. But a lot of our students go on internships. And then, yeah, we have, so there's faculty have grants, but the university doesn't provide grad students with participant incentives. It would be more something that you would do in conjunction with your faculty member. And the IRB timeline is both, I don't know if Robin is still on, but both Robin and I are on that. And I don't know if either one of us can answer that question because it varies a lot depending on the time of year. And, there's certain high demand times where it might take you a little longer. Diversity and place for international students. We have a good international student support network. There's a whole separate office for international students here. And then we have a program called Grad 360, which is a professional development program that's offered by the graduate school that offers events year round with the notion, like our current graduate school dean is really into student development. And, that's not just learning statistics, but it's learning leadership skills and learning well-being management and learning about, how to be a good teacher and just, all sorts of different stuff. And so they have a whole ongoing series of events related to graduate professional development. I think what I want to do, I just generally speaking say that we're very collaborative. People work with multiple faculty if they want to. They don't have to. Some people work with faculty in other programs. It's kind of, I think we're just very flexible about that. I would say, just to answer this one because it's important, generally, yes, there's going to be an expectation that you're going to be doing something at least somewhat related to your faculty advisor's work and in your thesis and dissertation. You can certainly do other things other than that, but that you're there to be part of a faculty research team, and there's an expectation you're going to contribute to that. One of the ways is that through what you do with your thesis and dissertation, but there's also a good deal of flexibility in terms of how that plays out, I think. So I wanted to give the grad students a chance just to kind of weigh in. I don't know if you need to answer all these questions, but if there's any of them that really spoke to you that you want to talk about, I think it'd be great to hear your perspective.
Okay. I guess I'll start with the grad student housing one. Just because I feel like that's a question I get a lot. Is most people, nearly, I would say 99% of people live off of campus, in apartments in and around campus. Clemson is relatively small, so you can get to campus in no more than 10 minutes. Different places of living based on price point, whether or not you want roommates, really can't go wrong. Some people choose to live in Greenville and commute an hour or 35 minutes to an hour. Those places tend to be slightly more expensive, but that's if you want to be in a bigger city, I guess. Noe, do you want to pick a question now?
Yeah, sure. Let's see. I guess I'll take on the thesis versus non-thesis question since I'm the master's student here. So what made you decide for the thesis or non-thesis option? Personally, just full transparency, I took a year off after graduating with my bachelor's. So I just wanted to kind of get my footing into a graduate program before making like a commitment. So I chose a non-thesis route. But to be honest, I feel like I've still gained like a lot of skills through the non-thesis route. You're not robbed of anything or robbed of any type of learning or experience through that route. So just kind of stuck with it. And I thought that my skills were really helpful in, just helping out other faculty members or just my fellow classmates. I don't know. Does anyone have a specific question that you want us to address, or should we just go in order? Let's see.
I can tackle the balance research responsibilities and coursework and kind of typical day at once. So your typical day is gonna depend on whether or not you have class that day. So very rarely do you have class 5 days a week. It'll probably be 2 or 3 days a week. So you obviously go to class those days and then work on coursework and research in the meantime. The thing that helps me balance my responsibilities the most, it's called chunking. So I chunk off blocks of time. on which I designate work to do. So on Mondays, I know I don't have class. So in the morning, I spent this past semester writing my thesis. So that whole morning was blocked off for that. And then the afternoon was blocked off for Tuesday's courseworks that I hadn't finished yet. And then Tuesday I have class. So there's a chunk of time dedicated to class. And then there's more chunks of time dedicated to meetings, more homework, more research projects. I will say, as my time in the program has progressed, the responsibilities become more. You have more meetings, you get involved in more things. So that becomes a lot bigger emphasis that you have to manage your time and then try to stick with it. But I find that chunking it for me works the best in managing everything and making sure it gets done. It's a very cyclical schedule every week, but I find that it works.
I guess answering the same question, again, as a master's student with an assistantship that's outside of the department, it looks kind of weird for me. Sometimes I'm in our recreation center, I have like a hybrid situation, but I'm still able to apply the things that I've learned from the IO program or the applied program to my assistantship. I'm an administrative assistant with Healthy Campus, like I said before. So it's just like under student health services. And it's not too rigorous, but it kind of ebbs and flows throughout the semester. So you have to really practice pacing yourself, because it's very, very easy to just let things just pass by without doing too much. You're like, oh, this is down the line, but really now you're like having a full week with nothing but presentations and tests and different research proposals you have to write. So it's really on you to make sure that you pace yourself, because it ebbs and flows a lot. I guess continuing, what do you wish someone would have told you when you were applying to IOP programs? Honestly, I haven't really had any bad experiences that it's just like, oh my gosh, like I hate this. I wish someone would have told me about this. Definitely a lot of reading and writing, which I feel like is expected, but up until this point, I wasn't used to writing 3,000 word papers for maybe most of my classes. So just pacing yourself with that, of course. And I guess the connotation of this question is a little bit weird, but something that was like a nice surprise to me was that a lot of my classmates became my friends. So that's been a nice experience.
Yeah, I think, I think probably my colleagues would agree that I think probably a lot of us have lifelong friends from our graduate programs, because if you think about it, it's an intense experience that you go through together in a small group of people that share a lot of your interests and values. So that tends to be a kind of a bonding experience for people in a lot of cases.
Yeah, I agree. I think building off of that to what is your favorite part about being a graduate student is part of the connections. Not only do you get a great education being at Clemson, and so many opportunities are provided to you to do research, but we do emphasize connectivity and just hanging out with your cohort outside of research and becoming friends with them. I would say Baba had mentioned our student organization that's called CSIOP, and we emphasize just student development as well as hanging out. We have social events at least once a month to try to get a break from all of grad school, to remember like it is okay to still have fun every now and then. Work-life balance, but also we host speakers every month on the first Friday to help with development, learn about careers, whether that be an applied setting or an academic setting. So I think just the overall experience is one of my favorite parts.
I think one of the biggest things is that, and I say this on day one to people, that one of the big differences I think with both PhD and a master's program is that, at a place like Clemson, there's a lot more student ownership in the department than you have as an undergrad. And in terms of like, everything from what courses we offer to, we get feedback from students on who we're going to hire to, really pretty much everything is, who we bring in for speakers, just we ask our students to do more, right, than you would be asked to do as an undergraduate. But, it's I think because we see the students as really part of the program, not just sort of as paying customers, I guess. So that's just, it's a very different orientation. I didn't remember what else we had in here. What is it like living in Clemson? I don't know. I don't live in Clemson. We're kind of like the faculty are kind of spread out, you know, so that some people live right in Clemson, which is typical, you know, small college town. I think a lot of my colleagues on here kind of live between Clemson and Greenville. And there's various kind of smaller communities there that are maybe a little bit less expensive and with a, you know, short commute. Then there's people like me that live a little closer to Greenville and want to be sort of closer to, you know, city life. My wife's definition of student quality of life is how far she is from a Target. And so Target's closer here than it would be in Clemson. But student life outside of academics, I think they touched on that a little bit. I don't know if you guys want to say any more. I mean, a lot of the students go to football games and, you know, typical college bar scene, but, you know, there's also, you know, things to do in Charlotte and Atlanta and Greenville. And, you know, I think that you know, a lot of it is like it's a pretty traditional Southern football oriented university, you know, that occasionally offers education on the side. But, you know, but I think there's lots of opportunities for outdoor activities if you like to hike, recreational stuff. I don't know if you guys want to say what you enjoy most about living in South Carolina. I mean, I could talk about it, but if anybody wants to comment.
Well, I'm from Michigan, so the weather. But also I'm very into sports, so just the athletic aspect of being in South Carolina, and everyone is super friendly, and it's more community oriented than my state up north.
Yeah, I guess piggybacking off of that, I got my bachelor's from Mississippi State University. So like the rural feel, like small town feel, like football is life is very, very familiar. So I really have no complaints there. Personally, I'm from just like outside of Atlanta, which is really comfortable for me. And I like to drive. So I kind of go back home anytime I get, which is convenient. But South Carolina is really nice. It's very nature filled and a really beautiful state and campus.
You know what, I'll add the cost of living is good, which is like nice for grad school. Right, if you like, you know, don't want 5 roommates or something, like you're in DC. So that is definitely something. And there are a ton of waterfalls actually in this area. It's like pretty special and unique. People like told me about it, like it lives up to the hype. It's very cool about this area in particular.
I'd also, a lot of people check out Asheville, North Carolina too, as like kind of a, you know, hipster, like cool art community place that's not too far away. So it's worth investigating. We're at time, so I'm gonna, I think, skip kind of the general questions, I guess. And I don't know if there's anything I'm sort of want to say about any of these. Yeah, just in terms of when you apply, I mean, our deadline is January 15th. I would say that, you know, there's no advantage to applying early because we don't review any of the applications until after that. I think it's fine to apply straight out of undergrad, you know, depending on your background and all that, but certainly a lot of our students come straight out of undergrad. But certainly we take students with a master's degree too. And I don't know that there's one secret formula that's like the right way to do it. I think it's just kind of depends on what your qualifications are and how you match with the program. But that's really it. You know, we had an hour and we took it. I want to thank, you know, all of my colleagues for joining us and weighing in, and you know, thank you all for attending. Marissa, I think you were going to send out a recording of this to everybody, right?
Yeah. If I think I've got everybody who had requested a copy of the recording after, so I'll make sure that we get that out to everyone who attended, and then yeah, we'll get it up on probably we've got a YouTube channel for the department, so we'll get it also available on there too. So Thanks,
All right,
everybody.
and if this generates any follow-up questions, I would say just shoot us an email. Particularly me if it's something like about the program, but Marissa and Jenna in particular are recruiting students this year. Robin also, and then we'll take some non-thesis master students and probably some thesis-oriented master students too. So
Got Allison on
thank
here
you.
now.
Whatever your time. Sorry, go ahead.
Bob, I was just gonna say, I'm sorry, I missed introductions. I'm Allison Trailer for anyone who I miss, well, everyone who I missed. And I'm a faculty member in IO psychology, and I study primarily teamwork and training and diversity in the workplace. And I score in the big five, like 99th percentile on conscientiousness. So it's extremely unlike me to come in late. But anyway, here I am.
I always say I have low conscientiousness disorder. So, which explains a lot of my behavior. But yeah, thanks, Allison. I didn't see that you joined, so I appreciate you kind of weighing in. But yeah, so just thanks everybody. This, I think, great for us to have this. Really happy that you guys could join us. And if I haven't answered some question of yours, honestly, the best way to do it is just send me an email. It's a lot easier than scheduling a time to talk. Just, I think that's, true for a lot of my colleagues too. So I think we kind of prefer to start with email and then kind of go from there. But, I'm happy to, if you got a question, just shoot it to me. And it's usually something I've had before and that I don't mind answering, so don't feel bashful about it, I guess I'd say. And otherwise, I hope you, depending on whatever time zone you're in, I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks.